Okay, welcome back to Off the Cuffs. This is episode, not quite sure what episode it is, but it's like 5 or 7. And so today, I've been talking about chronological order and kind of giving an evolution of my life and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, it's like 6, 7, something like that. And I know I've been telling everybody consistently that I'm going to follow a chronological order. And then I'm just like, that's out the window. I'm going to start having guests. I'm going to start having friends on and, very cool guests. So I said, screw it. And I just I'll throw in some stuff and stories and tales of Reformed Gangster tales as I go. But I'm going to have some guests on as I go too. And today I have a very special guest. This is a good friend of mine, and is a real friend. He's not just a guy who says he's a friend because we're acquainted and he's on the show. He's actually my friend, and his name is Larry Mazza. And he has a very crazy history and a very interesting story and a very interesting comeback story, and his story is not even reached even close to where it's going to go, but he has a really cool story, and I wanted to bring him on to share it and then maybe inspire some people too. And then there's a lot we can learn from Larry. And for example, this guy just ran 15 miles today, but I'll let him talk about that. So I just wanted to introduce you. Larry, say hello to the viewers.
Hello to everybody watching, listening, and Alan, thanks for having me.
No problem, buddy. So that's one. So Larry is, I don't want to say his age, but I'm going to tell you what, he looks like about 20 years younger than he is. Now, the guy's a fitness freak. And some guys are like into fitness at his age, but then there's some people that are like freakish. He's one of them are freakish. The dude ran 15 miles today. That's crazy. If I ran 15 miles, I'd be in bed for 3 days. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I'm in pretty good shape weight-wise, but stuff like that I can't do. So anyways, God bless you for that, Larry.
Well, Alan, I got to tell you, it's more of a run-walk.
It's still.
It's still good. It is. It's a great workout because if you try to run the whole way, your knees are going to start going, your hips are going to start going. So you walk, you run. We do a lot of uphill throughout that 15 miles. And it's not always 15 miles. Usually it's about half of that. But today we didn't do any weights, so we went the extra distance.
It's still gangster because when I'm out trout fishing or salmon fishing out in the wilderness, up in the woods, I might walk in a day like 4 or 5 miles, but it's climbing through brush and over rocks and boulders and stuff. And the next day, man, I'm just beat up, sore, man. I'm just like, everything hurts. But let me digress. I want to so the people listening kind of have an idea who you are, and that's important before we go on. So Larry, in another life, was a wise guy for the Colombo Crime Family. He was kind of a soldier for a guy named, if you don't know who he is, Greg the Grim Reaper Scarpa. He was a very, very bad guy, kind of a homicidal maniac, bad murderer, killed a lot of people, did a lot of wrong. And Larry was kind of pulled into this guy's world when he was a young guy. And in fact, I'm gonna let Larry tell some of that story, as much of it he's willing to tell. Obviously, we don't have enough time to get that deep into it, but I mean, and I'll let him kind of decide where he wants to go with it. But man, what a freaking crazy story this guy has. And then I want to talk about in a few where you've gone since you got out of prison and the things you've done and things accomplished, some of the people that you've had to work with and stuff like that. So
on the head.
Tell me from the beginning, man. Like, okay, so you're a young guy. You're like 17 years old. You said this. You told the story before, but
well, here's the thing. You hit it on the head. We probably have to do 2 or 3 shows.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, and absolutely, we'll be back. But it started. I was about 17 years old and was on a good path to success, following my father's footsteps, and I had a good upbringing. I had no reason to drop out of college and all of that.
Yeah, your dad was a fireman. He wasn't a wise guy. He wasn't
lieutenant in New York Fire Department, 25 years. And I just I was working, going to school, and I met this older woman. I mean, at the time, much older than me. I was 17. She was about 32, something like that.
I got to preface this too. Larry was an extremely handsome guy. So how this happened, I could see how this happened. He was one of those, very handsome young men.
You're killing me.
Yeah, it's true. It is what it is.
I was a good-looking young guy. Now, who knows? But anyway, I wound up getting into an affair with this woman, and just from delivering groceries to her house, and it started getting serious. Ultimately, I found out that her husband was Greg Scarpa. And at the time, it didn't mean that much to me. I didn't know who he was. But soon after, when I got closer to him, then I knew who he was, and he opened a lot of doors for me. And it just took
but the
off.
crazy thing is, he suspected that you were sleeping with her, didn't he?
I'm not sure at what point he knew, but early on he didn't. And Linda, the wife, was very persistent on wanting me to meet him. And I could never understand how that could be possible. But finally, she convinced me that was the way to go. And when I met him, like I said, he opened doors. He put me in a big company as the sales manager. And, one thing led to the other. I got real close with him. But you got to realize as time went on, I now started to know more about him. And he had 2 other wives that I knew about, along with Linda. And later on in life, found out there's a third. I don't know if he was married though, but there was a third with kids. So he's had other women all around. So at some point, I think I just made his life easier because Linda was his youngest wife. He was in his 50s, about 50 at the time when she was 31 or 32. So I sort of made his life easier. That's my opinion.
So you're saying that you're suspecting that he kind of pushed her off onto you, knowing that you were older?
I don't know. When she met me, she took me in, and we were. It was secret. But as time went on, somewhere along the way, they had a discussion or whatever. I don't know for a fact how that happened, but ultimately, she told me I had to meet him. It would make life easier for us. How I got convinced, I'll never know. But I did. I sat down and met him.
But he knew. Like, it's okay. I get how she could convince you because she wants you to do good in life. She wants you to be successful, have money, and meet people, whatever. Right. But from his perspective, she's pushing you onto him. Like, what's he thinking?
Well, like I said, I think he had so much on his plate with other families and other wives. I don't think it bothered him that much.
Yeah.
It wasn't an ego thing. It wasn't a pride thing. He had her for however many years. It was his trophy. They had kids together. So it just simplified things. And then, as we got closer, now it became a whole different circle. It became a whole different ballgame. Because now I'm meeting other, wise guys, captains, bosses. I mean, I was meeting incredible people. So he had to let me know that he knew at some point. Because now I was feeling real bad about things.
Well, not only that, let me ask. I have to ask. I never asked you this before. Did you ever fear for your own life? I mean,
that's part of it,
dude, man.
That's part of the reason. That's part of the reason she insisted on this happening. And I remember because I was getting paranoid. He asked me to be a couple of places, and I didn't show up, thinking it was my night. She to the point where she told him, and he had this conversation telling me that what's happened to you, I see the same guy. You were happy, you were always, loving life. Now you're he was seeing the things that were changing in me with this feeling of paranoia. And that day he finally sat me down at the club was the moment of truth. And when he told me, I stood up. I told him, Greg, I got a lot of respect for you. You're far from an idiot, but only an idiot wouldn't see what was going on.
Yeah.
He busted out laughing, walked me outside with his arm around him. We were the only 2 there, obviously at this time. And he told me, as long as it doesn't leave us 3, as long as we're the only 3 to know, it could go on. Otherwise, you and I will be killed. So it's the first rule I learned about, messing.
When you said you and I'd be killed, did you think it was going to be because, say, Junior found out, or
because he was breaking a rule? Yeah, because that's a rule. It's not supposed to happen. We're all brothers. I mean, it's not supposed to happen. So, but as the years went on, I learned that rules meant nothing to this guy anyway.
Yeah,
he made his own rules as he went along.
Well, so at some point you started getting involved in the streets and the rackets with him that are a little more, and one of the things that you did well for him is like, sports things, stuff like that. But I mean, I imagine there was a part of you that looked up to the guy and said, I look up to him as a mentor for this, that, and the other, as a hustler and whatever. But, then you started seeing him doing some crazy stuff, you know what I mean? Just, I don't know if you witnessed the murder of anyone yourself at that point, up until that point, but you see people, a guy like that, and you're like, damn it, now the farther in I go, the deeper I am.
Early on, I didn't. But I've said several times, it's just, they take you along the stages when they're grooming you.
Yeah.
So, they won't ask you to kill your best friend. You hear that all the time. That's not going to be, that may happen 20, 30 years from now, unfortunately, but that's not going to be the first one. Typically, it's something personal where you feel you got to protect the honor of somebody and you're doing a noble thing. For me, the first one I was involved with, I had to give a guy a flat tire. He asked me to give this guy a flat. So me, my head was thinking, that guy probably parked in his spot or did something stupid. The next day in the paper, man killed fixing flat. So that's the first little taste I had.
Yeah.
I could have been charged, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I really didn't know why I was giving him a flat. But it's small steps. Then I saw, some real vicious beatings. Then when it was somebody that owed me money and had to come to the club, the guy's going to get hurt. Now I can't have the other guys do it. How would I look as a man in front of these other people? These other guys. So now I'm part of the beating. So it's a slow process. The one day that it exploded in front of me was there was this guy that was in the family. His name was Donnie. And he had called Greg a rat. He said, this guy's a rat.
You called Greg a rat?
Yeah, not to his face. So this is what happened. It gets back to Greg that he heard about this conversation this guy had. So Donnie comes. He came, almost every day to the club, dropping off numbers and money and stuff. And I'll never forget it. Greg takes the money, finishes the business, puts it away. And he says, Donnie, what is this I hear? I'm a rat. The guy turned white. Tried to get out of it, saying, oh, my God, it was just stupid talk. I was drunk. I don't know what I was saying. He says, you got any paperwork or anything like that to prove it? He says, no. The minute he said no, Greg reached in for the gun, shot him in the head from the
Can't prove it.
You can prove it. So now a lot of guys won't do that. I don't know that I would. Somebody call me a rat, I might crack him or something, but I would have the right to kill him. I don't know that I would take out a gun and shoot the guy right there. I'd give him a chance, probably say, what are you talking? How dare you? Whatever.
Depends what stage you in the game
this guy
you do.
This is the difference. Yeah. He took the gun out, shot him right on the spot in front of all of us. That was it. We carried him out. We had to change the carpet. Bobby was colorblind, and he brought in a new carpet. He brought in a rust-colored carpet. We had a blue room. Yeah,
that's funny. Well, I mean, that's I never heard that story. I didn't know that story, but I could imagine that when I picture Greg Scarpa in my mind, that's the type of guy he was, like who would do that. And
he's ice cold killer.
If somebody called me
some guys.
I don't think I'd cold blood kill him, even if I was in the deepest stages of the game. If there was a bunch of guys around and my life could be in jeopardy, yeah, I might kill them because it's strategic. Would I pull it straight out and blast them? Probably not.
Yeah. No, this guy was begging forgiveness and said, I would never do that. I don't know what I was talking about. But, there's a story came out later on that he killed his own brother. And I heard that from
Greg did?
a New York detective. Yep. That the brother had paperwork on him and brought it to him.
Oh yeah, well we know he had paperwork.
Yep. Another day or two later, he was in a card game. He got blasted, and nobody really knew for sure. They sent a couple of black guys in along with it, but the detective told me, no, that's exactly what happened. It was Greg.
So Greg's brother got hold of the paperwork because he knew he was an informant. He was worried about him exposing him, so he went and killed him. I just wonder who, like, of course, he blamed a couple of black guys. That's a standard issue,
Yeah.
excuse. But so when you're,
it was during the war. It was during
huh?
the war. It was during the war, and a lot of people were hoping this war would end. And Sal probably figured that would be a way to end it. Tell his brother, look, you're a fucking rat. Go retire. Get out of here. You know? And Greg wasn't ready to retire or anything.
No. So Greg had AIDS already at the time?
Oh, yeah. But this was late. This was late in the game.
Late in the war.
Late in the game. We got pinched a few months after this, maybe 6 months after Sal got killed, the brother.
Well, yeah, that's another aspect of the story. I can give a couple highlights of that. So eventually, what happened? In fact, you tell it much better than me. So years went by. You were involved with this guy. You were under his wing. You found out that he's basically a homicidal maniac, and now you're kind of stuck under his wing because what do? You can't just walk away from this game. You become a made guy, and you're taking an oath. You work under him. You're under the Colombo Crime Family, which is Carmine Persico's family, and Greg's kind of one of his top guys under him, and very loyal to him. So now you're stuck. Then kind of explain what happened.
But I gotta say this. At some point, while you're coming along in this life, you're not stuck in it anymore. I mean, I made the naive mistake at a young age, but now I'm in my 20s, and I'm making my own decisions, and I'm liking the life. I like the same thing you see in movies.
About Greg a little bit, right? I mean, you were a little scared. I mean, how you walk away from that guy?
But I never looked at it that way. Now we were so close. I was a man, so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed a little bit of it. The respect. You see that in the movies, and sometimes it's silly, but it happened. We would walk into restaurants, and didn't matter how crowded it was, you got that extra. And, the avenue we were on, 13th Avenue, we never shook anybody down or anything like that. We protected them. All we wanted was whatever their business was, if we needed you, you drop everything and come for us. Like we did have our window broken once in the front of the club. So the guy down the block was a window and mirror guy, and he was out on the road somewhere. Bobby called him up and said, hey, we need a new window. And he says, well, I'm out. I can't come back till tomorrow. He told him, you come now. Guy came, fixed the window, but that's what we expected. We didn't, we were always there for him. And we found him jobs and things. So we were good for the avenue. And all of those things are what make you want to be part of it.
So I understand that aspect of it because from my own life experience that I wasn't nobody special. But in some ways, I was special because I was a Toco by blood. Mm-hmm. So my uncle and they were all the bosses and the big captains, and so I kind of had status where a lot of higher ranked capos and made dudes didn't even have my status. I was able to run in and out of that and get all the VIP treatments. Plus, I was just a known lunatic. And for being a known lunatic, like all the owners of the nightclubs and the titty bars and the restaurants, and like they wouldn't even take my money, man. I would go in there, run up a tab, and they're like, no, Gunner, you're good. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And so I understand that level of respect, how it's addicting, and how you get it. In fact, when me and you were in New York, I'll never forget it. We went to Little Italy, and when we were walking by Umberto's clam house or whatever, the dude, the concierge there, saw you.
Patsy.
He's like, hey, Larry, how you doing, man? And I could tell that he still had a high level of respect for you, and when you walked by, he made sure to come out and say hello and, shake your hand. And so I understand that. It's all part of the life.
So I can't ever say that I was stuck. Again, early on, the mistake was made, got in, but now I enjoyed the rise. But the higher you go up, you start learning the treachery. There's more treachery, more backstabbing, more lies, more rule breaking, because we're told the rules and we're living by them, but the higher ups are breaking them, between drugs, taking over families, talking to the law, who's wearing wires and making deals, or street informants like Greg,
Yeah.
Look at all the rules he broke. That one.
Every rule.
He allowed me to be with Linda. He was obviously an informant all those years, and then drugs. He became a big drug dealer.
Yeah.
Big, huge. So I don't think there was any rule he didn't break.
Yeah, well, that's like you're saying.
Except
the higher you go up the ladder, the more rules they're allowed to break.
And then even during the war, when we would go to meetings, there would be meetings like with, a couple of the Persicos and Russos that were still out. There'd be Carmine, other heavyweights, and then after that meeting, Joe T, our acting boss, would tell Greg, "Let's go have our real meeting." And me, him, Jimmy, and Greg came to the meeting. There's a real meeting after the meeting. I mean, look at, because now we're talking about who we trust, who we don't trust. And we're all just sitting at a table deciding who's the target, who. So it got really, it opened your eyes. But I saw it coming.
At that point, so you just explain a little bit by how Junior got locked up, Carmine Persico goes away, and this starts this war, this incredible war that's famous called the Colombo Wars of the early 90s. Yeah. And I happened to be living in New York at the time, so I was around some of these things, and actually was walking out of I tell the story a few times, where I was walking out of a jewelry store I was about to rob, I was casing it out to rob, and some of these guys, and I don't know which faction which, but they started shooting. This is on 3rd Avenue in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and they just started blasting at each other, and a bullet ricochets off of a car and hits the door jamb next to me, and I'm like, Wild West, wide open to open.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was one of the bloodiest shootout type of wars, in modern times for sure. But the Colombo family's been on and off at war, unstable. Yeah, I shouldn't say that. He was the boss. Time he lay, somebody in the family would feel he should step down and try to move. This one got bigger because there was a lot of people backing Vic Arena, who was put in charge by Junior Persico. When Junior went away for the 135 years, he named Vic Arena acting boss.
So greedy, man. He got put in charge. He could run the show that way,
I remember our captain, Scarpa, he's dead now. He died in prison, saying this guy had one person to answer to, and that wasn't good. All he got to answer to was Junior.
Right.
The rest was his. They split the profits, whatever. It put him up. But a lot of other people, and Vic Arena wasn't what you would call, and I'm not trying to disrespect him, but what you would call a real tough guy. He wasn't a shooter. He wasn't a Greg. He wasn't a John Gotti.
Why was he so greedy, though?
He made a lot of money, and he was put in that position because Junior thought he could control him. But I remember Greg telling me, Greg said, but everybody could control him then.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Guys beneath him were saying, why don't you take this over? Guys that didn't like Junior because they couldn't move up. John Gotti, very big behind Vic because he thought about taking over the whole family with Joe Scopo, which is a whole nother story. Joe Scopo was the underboss, and John and Joe were very tight growing up. So if Joe Scopo is the underboss and they get Vic out of the way like they did with Paul, now he has two families he's controlling.
Right.
And that's 2 votes on the commission. So
and on top of that, we know he's not scared to take on the boss, so he's whacked the big ball.
Absolutely. So, so Vic was listening to all this, and guys in our own family, Wild Bill had big aspirations. Vinny Lloyd went back a long way and didn't like that Junior never stepped down. So there was rumblings, and it was as Greg said, it was inevitable that it would be a shooting war, and boy, did it really got out of hand. You couldn't drive the streets without somebody shooting at somebody. It's crazy.
So, inevitably that led to kind of the whole downfall, as it always does with the families, every family.
Do it to ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, if you just keep it quiet, it's something you can learn from Detroit. They avoid at all costs, any kind of violence and wars and stuff like that. And so the boss is always very strict how he compartmentalizes each crew and makes sure that their crew isn't overlapping in rackets and territories so as to create conflict. As soon as it overlaps in the conflict, the rackets or territories, then you have conflict. And somebody gets angry and then they want to fight and they want to kill. So the boss, he's always ordering guys, back up, leave this to him. This is always, and there's this tier of like, this, how it is. There's a hierarchy that's supposed to be adhered to.
You're right. You know what the problem is in New York? 5 families.
Yeah, they all fight.
One family in Detroit, one family in Chicago.
Yeah.
The places with one family, it was always better. Greg always said that Chicago has it right. You have one family, and if you even know a good fella in Chicago, you get respect.
Right.
But where we are, everybody knows somebody. There's always territorial problems, and then when you go way up like unions and concrete, now that families got to start, they got to start sharing. So 5 families is not a good thing. He always said we should have one family in New York. Greg always told me that. Yeah, but it's just too many egos, too widespread. I don't know, but he's probably right.
It makes sense. Just like you said, Detroit, like you said, Chicago, same thing. If you even know a wise guy, you get respect. And the family is very tight. I mean, there's like 7 families in Detroit, but there's really only one family. The Colombo Crime Family is what they call it.
Right.
And,
there's crews underneath. Right.
Yeah, there's crews that are have other family names, but they all answer to the boss, and they all are very adherent to the rules. And dude, listen, if somebody messes up in Detroit, man, they're not about like I'm telling you. They're not about open war street like bloodbaths and stuff. They find a way to make them disappear. I'm not saying that because of the Jimmy Hoffa thing. That has nothing to do with anything. Mm-hmm. But if you do, like Scott, our friend Scott, Scott Burns published the murder timeline, which I wasn't even aware of, like 9% of these murders or disappearances. But there's 40 disappearances over the last 50 years that are believed to be mafia related. And they guys just vanish, man. That's the way to do it because you can't pin it on anybody. You just make somebody vanish and without blasting up the streets and stuff,
Yeah.
Witnesses.
Got out of hand. Yep.
You were a freaking cowboy, bro. It's not funny. Not funny. But I mean, if you want, you're welcome to share the story about what is his name? Black.
Nicky Black.
Nicky Black. I know it's a bad thing.
No, well, listen. It's again, it's in my book, so Nicky was one of the guys that was not going to move up as long as Junior Persico was boss. As a matter of fact, when he straightened him out, he put it on record: he will never rise above soldier.
Why did he do that?
I think the reason he got straightened out years ago when he bypassed
By the way, straightened out means he took the oath. He became a made man, just so people
Right. Well, when he got it, he was a very big heavyweight in the Teamsters. Okay? So he was making a fortune. And Joe Profaci or somebody at the time, one of Profaci's kids, wanted him to be made. And Junior did it as a courtesy to them, but he bypassed some guys that should have been straightened out before Nicky. So it was money that happened. And he was now aligned with Vic Arena because that was his chance to move up.
Yeah.
Vic did ultimately make him the consigliere when Carmine came back, when Carmine Sessa came back to the Persicos. So now he's second or third in command. That's a powerful position.
Oh yeah. So he that's like hitting a lottery for him.
Yeah. So he's backing Vic all the way. Durham, it was heated. There was a lot of shootings, a lot of violence going on. He sends a message to my Uncle Albert, who's one of the guys that got bypassed way back, who did a lot of work.
Ironic.
And he told my uncle that and somebody else was in the club that was a spy for us. So I got it from 2 places, my uncle, and one of the spies told Carmine Sessa, who was our consigliere, that if Butchie, that was my old nickname, doesn't come over to our side, I'm going to kill him. So my uncle reached out for me immediately, told me, and when he told me, he looked me in the eyes, Butchie, blood is thicker than water. He says, that's what I'm telling you. Don't worry about me in no way, shape, or form. But we made Nicky our number 1 target when we heard that. And the next day, driving along Avenue, our usual places, looking for different social clubs, just happened to see him pull up to one of his car service, one of his businesses, and I spotted him because he was wearing the same clothes he had on a couple of days earlier going to court. And he was dressed with a hat and almost like a lumberjack.
Yeah.
Dressed like a lumberjack with the plaid stuff and the collar up and the hat. But I knew it was him, and I knew his car. I knew
he was probably just trying to be disguised.
Yeah, just trying to look. Yeah. But the funny thing is, we found out later. Well, Greg might have knew that the law was following him this day.
Yeah, no, Greg knew.
They were all over him. So anyway, when we spot him, we pull out and we start following him around. He goes around a circle of the block, passes his club, comes back down again. He pulls over and he's collecting something. We found this out later too. Guy comes over to the car, hands him an envelope with $15K. Envelope was never found. But we heard that that's what this guy was there for, because he got splattered a little bit too. So anyway, we pulled up alongside of him and blasted him. And it was the biggest hit of the war, because he was a consigliere, he was a major, he was a heavyweight on Arena's side, and it caused a lot of cracks in their side. They started rethinking.
That's incredible. That's like, listen, you take out the consigliere or anybody that high level, man.
Should we, they started second guessing themselves. They were really second guessing themselves.
Like if I'm
and then I heard a couple of days later,
anyone could get hit.
My Uncle Albert didn't like Nicky at all, because he knew he got brought along a little faster than he should have.
Yeah, he got
stepped on. They said they never seen Uncle Albert smile so much on any of you. And Nicky was gone. So, and he was under him. He was in his crew. So
anybody who's listening, for the record, Larry has a book called The Life, which is a really good book. It's an amazing book. I believe it's one of the best true crime mafia books ever. His story is all in there with a lot more detail. And in the opening scene, the preface of his book is actually that scene where it starts. And there's so much more to the story. What people don't get is, like, you won't get, I don't want to ruin the book, but what you don't get, and you won't get until you find out from reading this book, is that Greg Scarpa all along was a federal informant. Larry never knew this, and nobody knew it. And Greg Scarpa was a federal informant for like 30 years. And the feds ended up getting in a lot of trouble because they were letting Greg Scarpa murder people and sell drugs and do all kinds of foul, illegal crap. But they wanted him on the street giving information. So Greg Scarpa was like a Whitey Bulger kind of guy, just kept giving them bullcrap information about this family, that family, this family, and he had a pass to do whatever he wanted. And meanwhile, here these guys are in a war, they're out killing people, they're pulling up on people to kill them, and Greg's like, yeah, we're good because I know the cops aren't on him today, or whatever.
Well, how about this? We had the scanner with the secret FBI frequency, which was like 5 numbers, random numbers.
Yeah, how the hell did you get that?
Exactly. Then there was another guy, we were gonna hit Wild Bill, and we were gonna dress as FBI agents. I said, Greg, I says, we're gonna need credentials, a badge. He's not gonna believe it. Not me, he knew me, but whoever we sent.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and says, don't worry about it. I can get whatever we need.
That's incredible.
So, but again, when he said that, I said, hey, well, he's a genius. He can get it.
Right. You see him do
then we had the big cell phone back then. It was like huge, like stockbrokers used to use.
Yeah.
Before the cell phones today. It's called a portable phone.
Yeah. I had one.
Yeah. Okay. And I should have said drug dealers too.
Yeah, exactly.
But stockbrokers, drug dealers anyway. And he was always on this phone with his
handlers, FBI
his person. I didn't know who it was. He kept telling us it was somebody on the other side. He made me and Jimmy think it was one of Arena's guys calling him with information. Made sense.
Yeah.
That would have been okay. I could have believed that. But meanwhile, all the while it was him. And that's ultimately what saved me from a life sentence, the corruption. Because I had a lot of info on that. Didn't know who it was, but everything I just said, the scanner, the phone calls, the phone booths we used, everything we used, times that I went to meet, where we met, it all started adding up. And then a couple FBI agents figured it out themselves.
So quickly, not quickly, take your time. In fact, because we'll do a couple more shows at some point. But
definitely.
So because there's so much to the story, but one of the most ironies there is in this story is that Greg Scarpa this homicidal maniac who was Larry's boss, ended up getting AIDS because he didn't want to get. Now I'll say it. He didn't want black blood in him. He had to get a blood transfusion because the guy ate aspirins like candy and it blew out his kidney or something. So he had to get a blood transfusion. Well, when they wanted to give a blood transfusion, he refused to take the blood from the hospital because he thought there was black blood in it. Well, he's like, no way.
He, you know, that where that piece of it came from didn't come from me about the black thing, because I never heard that. I knew he wanted one of his men's blood. He said somebody around him that matched. Yeah. He insisted.
But
he might have made a comment elsewhere that circulated, but I never actually heard.
But that's the word. That's the word, anyways.
Yeah, listen. But I knew he insisted on one of his men's blood.
Yeah, well, so much faith. Ended up having AIDS.
Well, he had, yes. Paulie was a big weightlifter back then. He was a real solid big guy.
Yeah.
And he used to share steroid needles. And that's how he got it.
So what did he do to Paulie?
Paulie died. Paulie died of AIDS.
No, did he?
Yeah, he died of AIDS.
Before Greg?
Long before. Greg had a lot more money, so he was able to pay for all the experimental drugs.
Yeah.
He was taking drugs, and he told them, I will do the experiment. Whatever. They were giving him drugs, and don't laugh, that they were giving apes to keep him alive.
Well,
and he says, do whatever you got to do. But it took a lot of money. I mean, he had to pay for all that stuff.
Well, we know those drugs work. I mean, you look at a guy like Magic Johnson or something. He's been alive 25 years.
Magic was probably doing all that too early on. Now it's come a long way. I mean, people can live with it, and it stays dormant, and there's medications, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But back when he got it, he was in that stage of Magic Johnson. It was all new. That's why he was so against any blood. Oh, no. But
so
it would have been better off with the hospital blood.
A point comes where he's kind of just deteriorating, right? Just kind of turning into a shell of his old man. And then somebody shoots him in the face, in the eye.
Well, that's a crazy story, too, because now his youngest son, who was a sweetheart of a kid growing up, you would have never in a zillion years thought this kid would be a gangster.
And Greg,
more naive and nicer, whatever word you want to use, than me as a kid. I mean, this kid was cuddly. I would come to the house, he'd sit on the couch next to me, want to sit right next to me. I'd put my arm around. Just a great little kid. He was my godson. But as the years went on, he started seeing, and, you know, maybe in high school, they knew who he was, his Greg's son. So he winds up getting involved, and he gets into the drugs. And this night, he has a beef with somebody that was on his turf, in his corner. So Greg calls me up.
Is dope turf?
And I'm sorry?
Is dope turf?
Yeah. So I go look for the guy with him. Well, first, I get in the car, and Joey has a gun on him. I grab the gun. I lock it in the glove compartment. I said, I'm going to talk to this guy. I said, we're not going to kill him tonight. So we go look, can't find him anywhere. I go back to the house. I tell Greg, it's probably for the better. I says, let's everybody cool down. The guy didn't hit him or anything. He raised the gun to him because Joey went after him with a bat. Whatever. I says, nothing happened. Let's find him tomorrow. Cooler heads. We'll sit him down and smarten him up. He agreed with me. So I drive home. Not home 5 minutes. Not even 5 minutes, the phone rings. I hear Linda on the phone, frantic. Please come back. I need you, Larry. Greg's shot. Joey's dead. So I go back. On the way, I pass the same block where this kid lives. There's law, cops, ambulances, firemen, a big crowd. Obviously, something crazy happened. So I go to the house. I pull up, and there's the car I was in earlier, Joey's car, bullet riddled. Kid in the back is dying. I hear him, it's Joey's partner, clinging for the last breath. He goes, and I hear it. I look in, I run up the steps. I get in the house, Linda. I see Greg sitting at the table. Okay, he's got a scotch in his hand. He's got a white towel that's turning red, holding it over his eye. And the scotch is in front of him, and he's on the phone because he was on house arrest. He wasn't supposed to go out. That's why I was there in the first place. He's telling the house arrest people, oh, no, I never left. No, it's a mistake. You must have went off by mistake. Now, I know. Now I got to get him in the car
Cold as
and
ice.
drive him to the hospital. There's 3 hospitals within 10 minutes of his house. He insists I take him to Manhattan, to Mount Sinai. That's the hospital that saved his life when he had the whole transfusion stuff going on. But I got to go through
miles of Brooklyn and freaking
2 tunnels. Cops used to sit at the tunnels. And here I got this guy dying, laying back dying in my car.
Got a bullet through his eye.
So anyway, I get him to the hospital and I walk him in. They put him on the gurney thing. They roll him in. And I'm telling the nurse that I think he fell in the yard and a pipe hit him in the eye. So she's okay. She runs in the back and she says, fill out this paperwork. So I'm going to fill out the paperwork for him. She comes walking back out like Nurse Ratched. And she tells me, you stay right here. She must have saw a bullet in his head.
Yeah, from the X-ray.
So I said, okay, I'm just going to fill out the papers, man. So she walks away. I go over to the door. I open it up. I says, Greg, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
He's laying on the gurney. All right, with his hands crossed like he's, you know, in a coffin.
Yeah.
Cross your hands like this. And all he does is go like this to me. Gives me the thumbs up. I get out of there. As soon as I get in my car, I hear sirens. They're pulling in. The lights are on. They didn't know it was me. I pulled away just in time. And that's the last time I saw him in the free world, giving me the thumbs up. Because after that, I went, you know, down to Florida. Jimmy was going to meet me there. We were sort of going to get out of New York for a while until things hopefully would have cooled, you know, died down. So.
So the dude. So all along, I was under the impression that they were trying to whack freaking Greg, and it wasn't. They were after his kid.
And that's one of the things that,
I mean, that's been on like Discovery Channel and crap.
That pissed me off. That pissed me off because here we were fighting the toughest guys in Brooklyn, the tough family guys, shooters, killers. We're surviving. We're knocking them off. We're winning this war. And some 18-year-old punk drug dealer shoots Greg in the eye and almost kills him over that nonsense. So you know how happy the arenas were.
Yeah, it's a freebie.
Yeah, it was a free. Exactly. They got a free pass. You know.
So what about the punk ass dope dealer? Anyone to get their hands on him ever?
He wound up getting pinched after that. Cooperated. He's somewhere in Arizona. We heard. But
what about Greg's son?
He got killed.
How?
Soon after Greg Sr. died, and Greg Jr. had, you know, 80-year sentence, whatever it is. He got lured into a drug deal, and they killed him. And it was partly because of the father. Whether the father because he was a rat or because this kid was running rampant because of his father who was a rat, whatever it was, he was marked.
You know, he was marked as soon as Greg got out. They got out with Greg was. And it's just like you, to be honest with you, as good as a soldier and loyal soldier you were.
But you know, again, I was older, and at some point, you know, it's my own choice. But this kid had no right being in that life. You know, if you're in it, first of all, this thing was started way back when, like other races, the Italians had problems when they came to America. Yeah. The Irish had it, the Jews had it, the blacks had it. Everybody had problems.
I mean, it goes back to Italy.
So they formed this organization to better their futures. You know, they stuck together, whatever it took. So we, you know, the bosses back then who were running this thing start making a lot of money. It's supposed to be a stepping stone. You don't want your kid to come into it. But what happened, it got way too lucrative and too much big business. So now if you're a boss, you want your son to become a good fella. You want him to be a captain because if something happens to you, he could take it over. It should have never been that way. It wasn't for that.
I'll tell you.
My thing, let me say this. You're making all this money, and that's why, like Paul Castellano, if it's true that he wanted to start legitimizing, what's wrong with that?
Right.
What's wrong with that?
Smart.
Exactly. So he was old school, like Carlo Gambino. Not that he wasn't a killer or whatever, but he sort of had a low key and have the family getting into other things. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what Greg should have done for his kids. Buy them the biggest restaurant, make them, make them businessmen, send them to the best law schools. That's what I would do if I ever got in that position.
Why do you say that? So Jack Tocco, my uncle, who was the boss of bosses in Detroit, 40 years, 39 years, his father was Vito Tocco, was the original boss of Boston, Detroit. He laid down an edict that said, if you want to take the oath, get straightened out, you have to get a degree in business. True story. Only family you'll ever hear that. Mm-hmm. Every single made dude in Detroit has a business degree. So then, obviously, there's some guys slipped through the cracks, and I know some low-level guys that ended up straightened out, and they never got their degree. But anybody who rises above soldier, they're a capo or crew, in charge of a crew or whatever, these guys graduated with a business degree. And Jack Tocco had 9 kids, and only like one of them, maybe 2, one's a little involved, and the other one is, all those kids, he sent away to school to be doctors, lawyers, seeded their businesses. When he died, the FBI estimated he owned 100 businesses. And by the way, Paul Castellano was one of his good friends. He'd go to see Paul like at least once a year, or sometimes every couple of years, but he would go hang out at the White House and go see Paul Castellano. They owned some businesses in New England together. And so these guys were old school, where they saw there's a way to transition in legitimate business. They owned all these legitimate business. They had this racetrack. But that's where they become a hypocrite too, because like the underboss was who ran more of the street rackets, and his street boss, which is Tony Giacalone, the one that Hoffa was supposed to be meeting at Dayton Irishman, and who I worked for, from time to time. These guys are huge drug dealers, and Jack Tocco liked to act like drugs were, below him, and he didn't want nothing to do with drugs or whatever. Well, rest assured, there were big fat envelopes getting kicked up to him, filled with money.
Well,
that was
that's
dope.
Where, exactly. So it's do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what happens.
Well, if I was them, if I was him, if somebody was kicking me $50,000 a week in envelopes, I wouldn't sell drugs and rob people and do all this crazy stuff either. But I don't have that.
Well, and then you go back to where what you said about being smart and having degrees. It takes away from the thug.
Yeah, the mobster.
For lack of a better word, that doesn't have it in him.
Yeah.
And that's his only choice. Its only way to rise up is to kill his way to the top, you know? So I don't know. But there was certainly nothing wrong with Paul Castellano's vision.
Yeah.
Or a lot of other. Look at my
wise guys
like that. Yeah.
There's 2 kind of wise guys. There's the smart, ambitious kind of, I want to do this for the money. I want to provide for my family, have a life, and go do fun stuff, have a retirement home, do all this stuff. Who think about it. And then you have, like you said, the thug who's in it because they want the respect, or they want to be people to fear them, and they want to just
the ego. They always got to be right. They always got to be the toughest. And
that's most of them.
But that's why one of my favorite gangsters to this day is Meyer Lansky.
Yeah,
this guy made was worth $500 million.
Yeah, back
30 years ago when he died in the 90s or whatever 80s, and he really never did a day in jail.
No,
who's better than him? Joe Bananas lived to 101. One of the richest. Did 6 months, and the only reason he did 6 months is because he checked in because the war was starting. And he was the main target, and that was the safest place to be. That's smart stuff,
That's a lot like my Uncle Jack Tocco, who's the same thing. He died, the FBI estimated his worth at about $100 million, and he only did 2 years in prison his whole life. Died at, I think he was 87? Yeah. 87 years old, only did 2 years in prison, worth $100 million, and raised all his family in a beautiful Grosse Pointe and mansions. Everybody's got mansions and businesses and stuff. So God bless him. But I'm just saying, not everybody's hit can be him either. No.
You look at Sonny Francesi, 75 of his 102 years on earth were in jail. Junior Persico, same thing. I mean, he lived 85, he was in jail 50 years. His brother, Alley Boy, in and out of jail his whole life, did 50 of his 65 years in jail, and he died of cancer. It never ends. Even Junior's son, Alley Boy, he got out of prison 3 times and didn't learn his lesson to move on, get away, take your money. He just had to keep going back. Now he's got life. I mean, so, but you know what? Let's, I think a great thing for us to do is let's do this again.
Okay.
But I want to talk about the Irishman.
Yeah, I was gonna say I want to do that. Like, but if you don't want,
let's leave it. Let's leave it at this. It's a little better next time.
Yeah,
and
I want to talk about that.
We got to talk about
your
that
career now, and you being
and the people I'm meeting, and some of those people are gonna come on your show. We'll get Mike Madsen on the show. Maybe can we get the 3 of us together?
Yeah, we could do that right here on the.
Yeah, we'll do it. I'll talk to him tomorrow. See, because once we start talking about the Hollywood stuff, why not?
That's what I'm saying, and the gangster stuff. I mean, the guy plays gangsters. I mean, I'm sure,
gangsters, movies, sports. I'm on every night if we could talk about that.
I would love to have him on and be that much better with you on, because the 3 of us dynamic would be fun. You know what I mean? Interesting conversations, and here we go. But I also, like I said, you have a show that you're going to start doing, right? My 2 cents.
Yeah.
My 2 cents with Larry Mazza. It's going to be on YouTube. My 2 cents, basically hot topics, and with a kind of a theme of sports. He's kind of a sports fanatic, sports expert.
Sports mob.
Sports
and
mob.
Movies.
And listen, and also just true events like
politics,
hot topics. He's got opinions. He wants to give you a 2 cents, and they're funny and they're good and he's smart. So listen to the show.
Well, I appreciate that. We'll do that for sure. So but it's funny. Mike sent me a video today. Everybody knows him from Reservoir Dogs, right?
Yeah.
Mike Madsen.
Of course.
Cut the cop's ear off.
Yeah.
He sends a video today where I'm listening to the music. Stuck in the middle with the
song.
And all of a sudden, I see his son sitting on the couch with a big red Band-Aid on his ear. Then he goes into the kitchen, and his wife turns, and she's got a Band-Aid on her ear, and he calls it quarantine Reservoir Dog style.
Yeah.
So,
When I talked to him on the phone, when I talked to him the one time on the phone, I said, it's hard for me to talk to you. I like just keep picturing you cutting my ear off. He was laughing.
Yeah.
We'll get together.
All right. Well, let's do that. Let's I'll talk to you tomorrow morning again.
Yeah.
And so I gotta check out the draft tonight.
The draft.
The NFL draft is starting any minute. So
yeah. Scott's probably all over that right now.
Yeah, I made a few bets legally, of course.
Of course.
But so I'm rooting for certain things to happen.
You betted on the draft?
Yeah.
I mean, some people just can't help themselves. I will promote, like I said, when your show is up and running, I'll do a plug for you every other show.
That's what we do for each other. Because like you said at the beginning, we're friends. No joke.
That's right.
So thank you.
I wouldn't require anything, just hear my voice. So that's it. So
sounds good.
Everybody, listen, this is Gunner. Another episode of my thing. We're going to do this again with Larry. It could be a couple of days, could be a week, but we'll have another episode. We're going to talk about Hollywood. We're going to talk about breaking into Hollywood, about writing, while working on the set of The Irishman. Larry did. He was in The Irishman. He was a script consultant for De Niro, Scorsese. So we'll talk about that and what he's got going and his show that he's going to be doing. So until then, like and subscribe my channel. Make sure you ring the bell, subscribe, like the show, share it, and as always, go to my website, artandapparel.com. Check out my books, To Be a King, Volume 1 and 2, perfect 5-star reviews, and I'll be back next time.
Let me know when this is on so I can promote it. I don't know when it comes on.
I will. I'll get the link.
And make sure you say hello to Maria for us.
I will.
Also.
I will.
All right.
For Kelly also. Say hi, Kelly.
Yeah,
I see Montesante in the background there. I see Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
There's Kelly right there. So that picture on the wall, I've been looking at it.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Larry. Be good, buddy. We in here now.